Tears welled up in the bald man's eyes as he stared at the aftermath. His trembling hand reached for his head as he turned to the others, pointing at Lu Sheng with a shaky finger. "Check on him," he ordered. The two men hesitated, fear gripping them. Behind them, the hole where Ji Sun had fallen was still obscured by smoke. As it began to clear, Ji Sun's limp hand emerged, the rest of his body hidden beneath rubble. They rushed to his side. One knelt by his unconscious form, placing a hand on Ji Sun's chest. He checked for signs of life, then looked up at the others, relieved. Lu Sheng held back, he reported. The strike missed his heart by a few centimeters. He'll survive. Ji Sun's eyes fluttered open moments later. Disoriented and exhausted, he blinked up at the ceiling, his thoughts a jumbled mess. He wasn't dead, but he'd come too close. The image of Lu Sheng and Dong Xingyi, standing amidst a mountain of corpses, flashed in his mind. How could they be so strong? He wondered. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng was already walking away. His expression was calm, even a little amused. Soft-hearted, he mused. He couldn't bring himself to kill so carelessly, unlike Ji Sun, who cut down lives like blades of grass. But just as the thought passed, Lu Sheng's demeanor shifted. His eyes widened, and he froze, sensing something off. A wave of unease washed over him, and he clutched his chest, his hand tightening around the fabric of his shirt. His expression darkened, teeth clenched as the feeling intensified. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Who's in danger? He thought, his gaze sharpening. He couldn't afford to delay any longer. Back near the cave's depths, Dong Xingyi had distanced himself from Dong Qingxue and Lin Wanwan as the lingering smoke cleared. Panic-stricken, Lin Wanwan ran after him. She grabbed his arm with both hands, breathless. "We can't go any deeper," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "It's too dangerous." Dong Xingyi stood rigid, fists clenched, staring ahead in silence. His eyes gleamed with a cold, unnatural light, and the air around him began to change. With a swift motion, he yanked his arm free, forcing Lin Wanwan back. She stumbled, fear gripping her as she gazed at him. His eyes, they were glowing like a beast's. Dong Qingxue, still watching from a distance, reacted immediately. She extended her arms, her body enveloped in a fierce purple aura. "Get out of the way!" she shouted at Lin Wanwan, her voice filled with urgency. She summoned her power, materializing several sharp icicles made of energy. They hovered in the air in front of her, radiating a deadly force. With a swift movement, Dong Qingxue directed the icicles at Dong Xingyi, launching them toward him at blinding speed. As they sped closer, Dong Xingyi remained still, his back turned. But just before impact, a malevolent energy flared up around him, forming a protective barrier. The icicles slammed into the barrier, shattering on contact. Shards of energy scattered in all directions. Yet Dong Xingyi didn't even flinch. Dong Xingyi's eyes narrowed with a sinister gleam as he turned back, locking eyes with Dong Qingxue. "Do you really want to die?" he hissed, his voice low and menacing. But Dong Qingxue, unfazed, approached him, her body radiating intense energy. She stared him down, her gaze unwavering. "We need to leave. Lin Wanwan samples have already been collected," she stated firmly. Dong Xingyi said nothing, his silence thick with tension. Lin Wanwan, nervously fiddling with her fingers, approached them. Her cheeks flushed, and she hesitated before speaking. "Dong Qingxue's right. We should go. I don't want to stay here any longer," she added softly, her voice tinged with fear. Rage flickered in Dong Xingyi's eyes, but he kept his silence. At that moment, the entrance to the spatial crack began to pulse with a powerful, malevolent energy, shrouding itself in thick smoke. He turned away from them, facing the ominous entrance. "You should leave first," he muttered, his voice cold. Dong Qingxue and Lin Wanwan exchanged a glance, but said nothing, watching him closely. The crack filled with smoke in the blink of an eye, and Dong Xingyi began to move toward it. "I'm going to check the deepest part of this crack," he declared, his voice filled with an unsettling calm. As he approached, hands made of malevolent energy clawed their way out of the crack, reaching for him. Dong Xingyi watched them with a twisted smile, his eyes glinting with dark pleasure. "Something's calling me," he murmured, a crazed grin spreading across his face. The allure of the crack consumed him, and he began to believe that the pinnacle of martial arts lay within. Dong Qingxue, sensing his growing madness, rushed forward. "Don't be a fool," she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. "Even if the pinnacle exists, it wouldn't be hidden deep inside a crack like this." You're being deceived. But Dong Xingyi only smiled wider, his eyes clouded with a sinister determination. The pinnacle of martial arts does exist, he insisted, his voice dripping with conviction. The energy from the crack intensified, filling the air with an oppressive force. Dong Xingyi clenched his fists and took a step closer to the crack. It's here. I know it. Dong Qingxue watched him, her expression turning to one of grim realization. He's lost his mind, she thought, placing a hand under her chin, trying to figure out their next move. Lin Wanwan, trembling beside her, clutched the straps of her backpack tightly. Desperation welled up inside her as she called out to Dong Xingyi, her voice shaking. What are we going to do? We can't go back alone. Please help us, she shouted, covering her ears and shutting her eyes in fear. But Dong Xingyi remained oblivious, his focus locked on the crack. Seeing her pleas fall on deaf ears, Dong Qingshue's expression hardened. She clenched her fists and turned to Lin Wanwan. Stay here. I'm going to bring him back, she said, determination lacing her voice. As the spatial crack seethed with malevolent energy, Dong Qingshue's gaze locked onto Dong Xingyi. A fierce determination ignited within her, and a vibrant purple aura flared around her body. She sprinted toward him, her mind set. We need to bring him back, she called out to Lin Wanwan, her voice filled with urgency. Lin Wanwan, initially frozen in place, snapped out of her hesitation. She activated her own powers, her body glowing as she raced forward to assist. Dong Qingxue, despite her heels, planted her foot firmly on the ground, skidding to a halt in front of Dong Xingyi. Her eyes sharpened with resolve as she prepared to take drastic action. With a swift motion, she sliced through the sharp rocks hanging from the ceiling with a wave of her hand. The rocks crashed down, blocking the entrance to the spatial crack and kicking up a thick curtain of dust and debris. Dong Xingyi paused, momentarily taken aback. Lin Wanwan, sensing an opportunity, dashed ahead and positioned herself in front of him, arms outstretched. If you don't come back now, I'll tell Mom, she threatened, her voice wavering but firm. For a moment, Dong Xingyi stood still, his expression unreadable. But then, as the malevolent energy around him intensified, he moved with blinding speed. Lin Wanwan barely had time to react before she was forced to step aside, fear flashing in her eyes. With a deadly calm, Dong Xingyi clenched his fist and shattered the rocks with a single powerful kick. He turned back to Lin Wanwan, his eyes cold. You can do whatever you want, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. But understand this. Lin Jiue's path is her own, and mine lies ahead. Lin Wanwan watched in stunned silence as he turned away, his figure slowly fading into the swirling smoke. Despair weighed heavy on her shoulders. He's really going, she thought, her heart sinking. Normally, Dong Xingyi revered their mother like a goddess. But now he'd crossed a line she never imagined he would. As Dong Xingyi disappeared into the murky depths of the spatial crack, Lin Wanwan rushed to Dong Qingshue's side. Are we just going to let him go? She asked, desperation creeping into her voice. Dong Qingshue's eyes were fixed on the spot where Dong Xingyi had vanished. She seemed lost in thought, her expression serious. Finally, she lowered her gaze and spoke with quiet determination. There's another way. Lin Wanwan's heart skipped a beat. She turned to Dong Qingxue, eyes wide with shock. What do you mean? What other way? She demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. Dong Qingxue watched Dong Xingyi as the thick smoke from the spatial crack engulfed the area. Her thoughts raced as she made a sudden decision. She sprinted towards him and wrapped her arms tightly around him from behind, closing her eyes as if bracing herself. Dong Xingyi halted, the malevolent energy around him pulsating with confusion. Slowly, he turned his head, his eyes narrowing as he tried to comprehend what was happening. Big brother, Dong Qingxue whispered, her voice gentle yet firm. Don't you recognize me? The tenderness in her voice cut through Dong Xingyi's madness, and his eyes widened with a flicker of recognition. The red glow in his eyes began to fade, replaced by a dawning realization. But before he could fully grasp the situation, Dong Qingxue continued, her tone filled with urgency. We're at the bottom of the spatial crack. This place is too dangerous. The mission to surpass Lin Wanwan, the only daughter of the great martial saint Lin Jingyue, is complete. There's no need to go any further. Lin Wanwan joined them, her hands clasped together. It's true, Dong Xingyi. We should leave now. Dong Xingyi's gaze shifted, sweat beading on his forehead. He clenched his teeth, struggling to fight off the voices in his head. Dong Qingxue, still holding him, pressed her forehead against his back. "Please, I need my brother to escort us back." Dong Xingyi placed a trembling hand on his head, his mind a whirlwind of confusion. "How did I bring them here?" He wondered, his thoughts spiraling. Just as clarity began to surface, a voice echoed in his mind, urging him forward. The entrance to the spatial crack surged with even more malevolent energy, and Dong Xingyi's sanity started to slip once again. "There's something inside, something I need," Dong Xingyi murmured, his voice distant and hollow. His body began to glow with a golden energy, and a red barrier materialized around him, violently pushing Dong Qingxue away. She screamed as she was flung backward, her body tumbling through the air. Without a second thought, Dong Xingyi resumed his march towards the spatial crack. Dong Qingxue, recovering from the impact, reached out desperately. "Wait!" she cried out, her voice trembling with fear. Before she could take another step, a giant mutant beast, shaped like a grotesque worm, burst through the wall. Its massive maw opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Dong Qingxue's heart pounded in her chest as the beast lunged at her. She barely had time to react before the creature swallowed her whole, vanishing into the earth in a swirl of dust and smoke. Dong Xingyi, encased in his barrier, spun around just in time to see the beast disappear with his sister. A surge of fury ripped through him. Lin Wanwan, paralyzed with shock, stretched out her hand towards where Dong Qingxue had been, tears streaming down her face. "No, no," she wailed, her voice breaking. Dong Xingyi's rage erupted. He threw his head back and unleashed a primal scream that echoed through the cavern, shaking the very walls of the spatial crack. As Lu Sheng ascended through the spatial crack, a fierce blizzard erupted from the entrance, chilling the air around him. With a powerful leap, he emerged from the crack, landing firmly on the ground. The moment his feet touched the earth, his spirit stirred violently, sending urgent signals through his mind. Confused and on edge, Lu Sheng's senses heightened as he realized something critical was slipping away from him. He quickly pulled out his mobile phone and dialed his mother. The silence from the immortal cells was unnerving, and the absence of their signal made the situation even more dangerous. His mother answered, and with a concerned tone, he asked how she and his father were doing, adding a casual greeting to mask his growing anxiety. Clenching his fist, he inquired if King was in class, ensuring that his family was safe. But as he tried calling again, the line went dead. No signal. The tension in Lu Sheng's body mounted as he stared at the screen. Why was the phone off in a military zone? He wondered, his mind racing. Just then his phone buzzed. It was a call from Qin Xiaojun. Without hesitation, Lu Sheng answered, holding the phone to his ear. "Old Qin, what's wrong?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Lu Sheng, where are you?" Qin Xiaojun's voice was urgent. "I'm in a spatial crack," Lu Sheng replied, his worry deepening. "Get back here quick. Something's happened to Dong Qingxue." The words hit Lu Sheng like a punch to the gut. His expression darkened as fear and anger surged within him. The wind whipped around him as he demanded, "What happened?" Old Qin's voice came through the line, revealing the horrifying truth. They entered a double S rank spatial crack. It's a level 10, an uprising. The call ended, leaving Lu Sheng reeling. Orange energy flared around his body as his determination solidified. He needed to get to the 7th war zone now. Gathering his strength, he launched himself forward, shattering the ground beneath him. His spear in hand, Lu Sheng blasted through the landscape, moving at such incredible speed that everything in his path crumbled. His teeth clenched, and with fury in his eyes, he silently urged Dong Qingxue to hold on just a little longer. At the same time, near the entrance of the double S rank spatial crack, an expedition team of soldiers arrived, bracing themselves against the chaos. The ground trembled as countless tentacles, pulsing with energy, emerged from the crack. The captain, holding a walkie-talkie, called for reinforcements from the 6th and 8th war zones. The severity of the level 10 uprising was evident. Casualties were inevitable. Gripping the walkie-talkie tightly, the captain's voice was grave as he requested updates. "How many teams are inside the spatial crack?" The response was grim. 8 teams. Among them, Lin Wanwan's team, the Martial Saint's daughter, and Dong Xingyi, the Central Eastern Emperor. None have returned. The soldiers stood paralyzed, uncertain of how to breach the spatial crack with so many mutant beasts swarming the entrance. The captain's walkie-talkie screen glowed, and a stern voice from his superiors crackled through, granting him full authority over the 7th military zone. They ordered the mobilization of all available stellar generals, directing them to enter the spatial crack and locate Dong Xingyi and Lin Wanwan at any cost. The weight of their mission was clear. If something happened to those two, the Ministry of War would face the wrath of the martial saint. The captain's gaze hardened as he stared at the crack, fear mingling with resolve. "Understood," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension. Turning to his soldiers, the captain clenched his fist and addressed them with grim determination. "This time, we give it everything we've got. Second team, assemble." The first team will descend directly. The soldiers, their expressions a mix of anxiety and readiness, listened in silence. But before they could act, one of them pointed frantically at the spatial crack. "Captain, look! Dong Xingyi and the others, they're coming out." The captain whipped his head around, his confusion quickly replaced by urgency as he spotted Dong Xingyi emerging from the crack, Lin Wanwan clinging to his back. But they weren't alone. Mutant beasts roared in pursuit, closing in fast. Dong Xingyi drew his sword, slashing through the air with precise, powerful strikes, deflecting the beast's attacks. The soldiers, recognizing their comrades in the fray, rushed forward to assist. Seconds later, the beast burst from the spatial crack, shrieking in agony as Dong Xingyi reached the entrance. The soldiers swarmed around him, pulling him and Lin Wanwan to safety while the bodies of the mutant beasts tumbled out, crashing to the ground outside. Dong Xingyi, drenched in sweat and trembling from the ordeal, collapsed onto a rock. His eyes were wide, staring blankly at the ground as incoherent words slipped from his lips. Behind him, Lin Wanwan broke down, burying her face in her hands as tears streamed down her cheeks. The captain approached, his hand outstretched to Dong Xingyi. Relief washed over him. He dreaded the possibility of diving into the revolt's den, but now, seeing them alive, he allowed himself a moment of calm. "You did it," the captain said, his voice filled with admiration. "It's no wonder you're the third disciple destined to surpass the martial saint. Not only did you escape unscathed, but you also saved 3 stellar teams trapped inside." Just as the captain finished speaking, Dong Xingyi's knees buckled, and he collapsed to the ground. Concern flickered in the captain's eyes as he rushed to help him stand, while Lin Wanwan, her heart pounding with fear, moved closer, sweat dripping down her face. But Dong Xingyi didn't respond. He knelt there, trembling violently, his gaze locked on the earth beneath him. Guilt consumed him, the realization hitting hard. He had been the one who hurt Dong Qingxue. His breath quickened, and sweat poured from his body as he silently cursed himself. One of the soldiers quietly approached the captain, his voice low as he whispered something that made the captain's heart skip a beat. The soldier revealed that one of their own had not made it back. The captain's eyes widened in alarm. He spun around, grabbing the soldier by the shoulders, demanding to know who it was and why this wasn't reported sooner. The soldier, remaining calm, pointed skyward and revealed the identity of the missing person, Dong Xingyi's sister, Dong Qingxue. He described her as a beautiful colonel in the 9th War Zone. Relief washed over the captain. He placed a hand over his chest, closed his eyes, and exhaled. If Dong Qingxue died, it was a tragedy, but not an earth-shattering one. Even level 7 masters often fell in battle, so a mere colonel was expendable. Dong Xingyi would recover. After all, he was the heir to a martial saint. This loss would be a test of his character. Suddenly, a brilliant golden light descended from the sky, shattering the ground as it landed. The captain threw his arms up to shield his eyes, his mouth agape in shock. Dong Xingyi froze, and Lin Wanwan, standing behind him, closed her eyes in terror. The golden figure was none other than Lu Sheng. With eyes blazing with intensity, Lu Sheng demanded to know where Dong Xingyi was. He gripped his spear tightly, his other fist clenched as his body radiated a suffocating aura. The captain, trembling, stared at Lu Sheng with terror. How could this man, with just a glance, make his hair stand on end? He was a 12-star general, and yet he was terrified. Lu Sheng's body ignited in flames, and with a furious roar, he ordered Dong Xingyi to come out. Dong Xingyi, lying on the ground, looked up in shock, speechless. The general sensed the escalating danger. Before Dong Xingyi could respond, Lu Sheng stormed over, grabbed him by the shirt, and hoisted him up. Panic surged through Dong Xingyi as he faced Lu Sheng's searing gaze. Lu Sheng's eyes burned with rage as he demanded to know where Dong Qingxue was. Dong Xingyi, overwhelmed with fear, broke into a cold sweat. Memories of what had happened to Dong Qingxue flooded back, and his eyes filled with regret. Lin Wanwan, witnessing the confrontation, covered her mouth and began to sob, believing that Dong Qingxue was dead. Seconds later, Lu Sheng released Dong Xingyi's shirt, his body radiating intense flames. His eyes locked onto Dong Xingyi as he spoke with a voice full of intensity. His grip tightened around his spear as he continued. But now, I'll show you the true martial path. Watch closely. Lu Sheng turned toward the entrance of the spatial crack, his expression unyielding. Dong Xingyi, still kneeling on the ground, stared at him in stunned silence. Lin Wanwan, hands covering her mouth, was frozen in disbelief. Was he really going back in? With his eyes gleaming with determination, Lu Sheng resolved to bring Dong Qingxue back and, in doing so, teach Dong Xingyi the martial path himself. As he approached the spatial crack, the general's panic was palpable. "Are you insane?" the general shouted, reaching out to stop him. "There's a level 10 uprising. This is now a triple S-rank spatial crack. You'll die if you go in there." But Lu Sheng was unmoved. His energy surged, expanding like a storm, and he clenched his teeth, his gaze furious and unwavering. He was ready to face whatever lay within the crack. Dong Xingyi, still on the ground, was overcome with fear. Sweat poured down his face as the reality of the situation hit him. This was Lu Sheng, a man willing to face death to save his sister. His terror only deepened as he watched Lu Sheng prepare to enter the spatial crack, fully aware that this was no ordinary mission but a battle against impossible odds.